Good afternoon and welcome everybody to session 6 of our webinar series, Great Minds Think Alike, where we dig deeper into the complexities of mining and explore business below the surface. The reason we created this series is because the mining landscape has changed dramatically over the past few years, and there are multiple current challenges and trends. For example, more complexity, massive efficiency and productivity losses, and environmental and safety challenges. However, there are opportunities that go along with those. We have the opportunity to reevaluate methodologies that we use, digitalization, automation, and employing new technologies which enable better visibility. Initially, we will gather a big picture overview of current challenges and trends, and thereafter dive deeper into each aspect of the complexities faced by mining companies, along with the approaches and tools to overcome those challenges. With the mining industry incurring billions of productivity and efficiency-driven losses annually, it's imperative to consistently re-evaluate the methodologies used. The mining industry has taken the same approach to mine planning for over 30 years. We need to employ new methodologies if we expect to get different results. Because the value chain is so complex, we have decided to create a separate session for each element in order to really dig deeper. We have everyone on mute simply to eliminate background noise, but we do want you to interact and participate. So please feel free to put questions in the chat box and we will try to answer them all at the end of the presentations. If we don't get to all of them, we will reply to you directly. For a better viewing experience, please click the 3 dots at the top of the screen above the word More, and then click Full Screen, which will maximize the presentations. I'm going to hand over to Dilly Naidu, Chief Vision Officer of Madala and Associates and Director of Rifle Shot Performance Holdings. Dilly is an internationally experienced business leader with over 45 years of experience in large corporates and government organizations. And Dilly has doubled the amount of passion. Dilly, over to you.
Thank you, Caroline. So this forum is largely for our partner PIMSoft to share their offering SigmaFine. But what I would like to do is spend a little bit of time on sharing the partnership between Rifle Shot as well as PIMSoft. And then I would like to go through a very quick snapshot of who Rifle Shot is and the services that we provide. You'll see I've titled this Data Everywhere, but no insight in sight. And I think we're all very familiar with the exponential growth of data. But how do we take that data to meaningful insight so we could make business decisions? And PIMSoft SigmaFine is one of those offerings that can actually contribute towards this goal of making better business decisions while saving lots of dollars. So our relationship with PIMSoft SigmaFine and Rifle Shot has been a journey. We've been appointed as a professional service partner managing the sub-Saharan Africa region, and we have a very, very good trusted relationship partnership between PIMSoft and Rifle Shot. The key areas we're focusing is the area of mass balancing, the metals and process accounting. As you know, in the metals and process accounting side of things, it's very similar to baking a cake. To draw an analogy, you don't bake a cake with using at a time in your home large quantities. You take teaspoons of things. How do you manage the costing of each one of these line items? And SigmaFine is one of those tools that has been designed, and I have been helping the oil, gas, petrochemical, mining, and allied sectors. The other area is the whole area of the information management from the enterprise databases or historians. So taking that data to information, converting that to insight so that you can make business decisions. I just want to move over and touch a little bit about rifle shot and what our purpose is. You know, our purpose is largely, we know the clients that we deal with, who are largely tier one clients, they've already made investments in technology and a number of solutions. So our purpose is to further enhance and consistently improve our clients' operational and business performance with the social conscious. And you'll be hearing a lot of this term called ESG these days. To us, ESG is not a fad, it's not a reporting tool, it's part of the rifle shot DNA. Now, how do we do this? We do this through innovative thought leadership. We've coined the term innovation cube, which is a three-dimensional way of looking at the end result. So it's a way we think. And of course, you do this through people. So the investments in human capital development in terms of reskilling, upskilling, and bringing in new graduates into our organization as well as our client organizations. And of course, we know there's, especially around COVID, there's been a big focus on relooking at business and transforming those businesses based on changing supply chains and customer behavior, and doing this through leading technologies and digitalization. And last but not least is the whole area of environmental, social, and governance. Quick snapshot of Rifle Shot. This year, we're proud to be celebrating over 21 years of enhancing clients' business and operational performance. We are proudly self-funded, putting our own sweat equity as a private company. We have a partnership ethos of trust to our clients as well as our strategic alliance and OEM partners. We have Africa as well as international experience, not only business experience, but information management experience. Our management team has an aggregation of over 180 years business and industrial experience. And we have a resultant as opposed to a consultant mindset. What is the difference? A resultant works in a true partnership manner with our clients as opposed to a vendor or a supplier relationship. And it's based on outcomes, measurable milestones. And what is agile today, it's something we've been doing for many years, where we look at things on a quarterly or 3-month basis and reevaluate and build this journey map, focusing on both the business as well as the operational improvements area. In the South African context, Rifle Shot is majority owned 52% by the Medallion Associates Group, which is a BE level 1 company, which makes Rifle Shot a BE level 2 company. Our core values, of course, this is extremely important. It's not about mission statements on the walls. It's part of our DNA in terms of how we think, how we operate, how we feel with passion, how we treat our colleagues, how do we treat our OEMs, our partners, and our clients, and all interactions. And of course, last but not least, while doing all this, how do we still perform financially based on the projects that we deliver very, very successfully, so we can invest more and more into the business and create more job opportunities. Some of the key industry sectors that we are focusing, the one that we're talking about today, which is the metals and mining, the energy utility sector, chemicals, and process industry. On the manufacturing side, we are focused both in the process manufacturing side as well as the discrete manufacturing side. Some key OEM partnerships, the one we are going to be presenting with today is PIMSOFT, specifically with the offering called Sigmafine. But we started off with the first session where we talked about the South African landscape of mining. We took a memory lane from where we've come in the last 100 years, and we will share a lot of that information with you if you haven't attended that session. And then we had a session with one of our key OEMs, Ion Trading, Ion Commodities, where we focused and talked a lot about the planning and scheduling, primarily in the sales demand forecasting area. With Adapt IT, we talked on the control of work, the whole area of security, which is a big issue, and how the tools that we have as minimize fatalities, injuries, reduced risks, and deaths through having electronic logbooks as well as electronic permit to works with a number of installations in Africa, South Africa, as well as internationally. We also had a session with Aviva and ISCube on the mining production management side, where we showed some of the functionality of an offering called Ampla. This morning, we also had a session with Aviva, where we talked about the unified planning and scheduling with an offering called Spiral. And then you will see for the rest of the next 2 days, we'll also have a discussion with Cleverness Digital, which will be focusing on the older areas of planning and scheduling onto ships and the monitoring, including the monitoring of carbon emissions through their offering. And last but not least, we'll conclude on Wednesday with our Brazilian partner, Soft Expert. We'll be focusing specifically on the tools for ESG as well as governance, risk, and compliance. So how do we serve our clients? We already touched on Innovation Cube and resultants, but we have a methodology that's called BAGD, which is an acronym for Business Alignment and Growth. And we do that through our industry sector experience, capabilities, and offerings. We also have dedicated subject matter experts per technology offerings. We have an established professional program project office in South Africa, so that not only do we do the initial implementation of the project, but on an ongoing basis where we've got clients for over 2 decades that we support. Of course, we live in South Africa, so we also, in everything that we do in business, try to adhere to the South African transformation and localization goals as part of the value chain. We have a dedicated client account manager per client, which we call a SPOC, a single point of contact. Here's an example of some of our long-standing clients, and you could see the names up here from Anglo American, who's celebrating over 103 years in the mining sector, through Eskom, the largest power utility company, where we have several years of engagement with them. The other being Sasol, which is a proudly South African company represented in 33 countries across the world. So the core team that we have in Rifle Shot that makes all this happen is complemented by contractors that we have on projects. And together with the core Rifle Shot team and the clients, we try to achieve the kind of results we chatted about previously. And we'd like to be, as our tagline, on target every time on each one of the projects that we're involved with. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Caroline, who will introduce Felicia.
Thank you, Dilly. Well, as you can see, Felicia has a wealth of experience and tends to undersell herself enormously. Felicia has the most incredible mind I've ever come across, and she uses it for the benefit of her clients, really in the detail of mass balancing and process accounting. Felicia's passion, again, matches her intellect. It's quite remarkable. Felicia, over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it's already on. Let me share my screen so I can speed up or go faster, depending on the conversation. So it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks to Rifle Shot for inviting PIMSoft. I'll just go to the first slide, and I'll take you through this presentation. So trust your data. We think trusting your data is when you trust your data is when you start to take actions really quickly and really start, let's say, stretching the boundaries of what you can do. And we believe that Sigma Fine, the product, is pretty good at helping you understanding your data quality issues, as well as identifying losses, and give you a good set of data to control and reduce these losses, or which can be even inefficiencies, as Dilip previously mentioned. I'm pretty sure some of you don't know who we are, so I'm just going to go quickly through our company, which is PIMSoft. Then I'll talk to you about why Sigma-Fine, which is our main product, could bring value to the mental health and mind industry. And I'm going to quickly run through the math behind how we do the mass and component balance in Sigma-Fine. And then I'll just run us through some customer stories. And the takeaway, it's just a brainstorming session. I think it's quite interesting. So that's me. And let's go to the company. So PIMSoft is the company, and we are here in Italy. We have office in Houston, America, and we have a support office in India. PIMSoft also owns Omicron, which is a Pi Expert group. As a company, we are an ex-OSI, let's say, partner, and we were like every partner possible. And we are now transforming our partnership to the Aviva framework. As I mentioned before, Sigma-Fine is the product. We've been around since 1993. We've changed ownerships quite a few times. I guess most thing to mention is that Sigma-Fine became a property of PIMSoft in 2010. The latest name or branch of product is the Sigma-Fine Hub, which is the web version of the product. And here we're launching different applications in time. The first one has been our visualizer. Now, data quality issues, they span quite a few things. They span about improving your measurement systems. It has to do with just the inherent precisions that are present. Bulk density is quite hard to measure. Online analyzers vary a lot depending on the maintenance, depending on whatever it is measuring. And so apart from having your assets, your tanks, your grinders, your crushers, your leaching things, you need instrumentation. And what we're saying, when you put everything together, there is this uncertainty, this inherent tendency to fail over a period of time. Today it's 1 meter, tomorrow it's another meter. We also have what do you do in the event of missing data? And so these challenges, they never go away. They're always there. And so you need a systematic approach to handle this data unavailability. The data defects can vary. This is just a few of them. You can have a defective sensor. It can be it can be dirty. It can be in the wrong location, out of synchronization. It can be it just failed. It can give you bad data calibration. So natural noise, and yet you still need to create a mass balance. You need to declare to your shareholders your production, and yet you have all of this uncertainty and error in your data set. So understanding where we're coming from, the Sigma-Fine product, while we reconcile, this is what everybody knows us for, we do validation and we do conditioning. Our validation, what do we mean by that? We mean that we can use not just your sensor data and your analyzers, we can also augment this data with estimates, with engineering estimates. We can augment it with financial movements of your data, your fiscal measurements of buying and selling. We can add all kinds of business rules that you use on a day-to-day basis to understand whether the data is good or bad. Behind Sigma-Fine, it's a structured data lake, database. And with this kind of infrastructure behind it, it's not an Excel tool. The data can be sliced and diced to address your production accounting on your utilities side, as well as on your material tracking side. Overall, we're here, our job is to minimize the uncertainty in the data that is being used to validate and to, let's say, on which you base your performance, including your financial performance. So this is our mission. Our mission really is to transform your manufacturing data into digital assets that generate a positive economic value for our customers. So you will see in my story at the end, you'll see that our customers, when they get Sigma-Fine, when they go after Sigma-Fine, it is to reduce losses. It is to have a better overview of how their assets are performing. The metals and mining industry is a little bit even more complicated than the oil and gas. I would say because of toll contracts. It's quite common in the metals and mining world that not everybody owns the mines, the beneficiation plants, the refinery, the smelters. So the material needs to be monetized as it moves from one owner to the next owner. The guy who's selling the final ingots, they know how many ingots they produced. The guy who's mining, he knows a little bit less, let's say. And the refinery also has the difficulty of sending the concentrate and buying. So toll contracting really pushes a requirement, an additional requirement to have better data of the monetary value of the material as it moves from the mines to the final product. I'm going to start with oil because it's what we know best. And in the oil world, oil goes missing, not with, people turning up and stealing your oil. It normally happens with somebody putting a small weld when you're in your discharge pipes, and they just siphon off your materials. It's quite hard to find a 1 liter per hour loss when you're pumping millions. Okay, but if you keep doing it for a long amount of time, Shell in Singapore, they lost over 150 million, okay, via that way. A similar method of let's say siphoning oil took place in this refinery in Marathura. And overall, I mean, this happens all the time in the oil world. This is, and they're the king of data reconciliation. They do it at a very detailed level. But overall, they believe, that Ernst & Young believe that every year about 133 billion of oil and refinery products go missing. So with this kind of tendency for oil to go missing, the oil and gas world has data reconciliation to really start seeing these gaps, not at the end of the year, but rather, within a couple of weeks, even not a couple of days. In gold, it's a little bit different. I start with the first one because it's, it's Kramer Media, it's very South African. And they estimate about 10 to 15 kilograms of gold disappears every month at this mine. This mine is about 1 million tons per year. And that translates to quite a lot of money. There are other kinds of thefts that occurs, let's say in the gold where, somebody turns up and they just say, give me your 900 kilograms, and you give it because you want to save your life. Data reconciliation doesn't really solve this issue. In Brazil, they do it differently. They just go on your mine and they just build an illegal plant and they just take the gold themselves. So these kinds of thefts or materials disappearing, it's not where SigmaFine can help. It's more here. It's the day-to-day run-of-the-mill where things go misappropriated. And misappropriated doesn't mean just theft, just means if you trust a meter and the meter says 10 and it should mean 9, you get paid, if it reads 9 and you should get paid 10, you get paid 9. And the guy gets 10 and you lose 1. So that's what we talk about losses. The first one, it's a study done by Emerson. And we know on average when they do loss studies, they save between 2 and 10 million for an average size refinery. If we go to the Emerson, to using the Kramer's estimate of 10 kilograms going missing per year, that translates between 2 to 9 million per year. I also found a recent report from the Ashanti mine, and they have a very good MCF factor, but still they have a loss of 6 million per year, considering the recoveries that they declare. So they're still having some losses, and they've commissioned quite a few studies. They're quite interesting, the kind of losses that they have discovered at their refinery, and they push data reconciliation as a tool that you should incorporate in your planning and in your day-to-day operations to identify inefficiencies and losses. In the oil refinery, but just to let you know how things are. So in the oil refinery, having an unaccounted loss of 0.5%, it's the target. That means they need to know 99.95% of where the material goes from entry to exit. In gold, they want to be, it's the same, they would like to be 100%. But if you get 97%, the mine call factor, so what you think you have mined, if you can find 97% of that in your product or in your waste, you're pretty good. But just bear in mind, the poor, just look how big this range is. There are some sites that can only find 58% of what they mine. It's pretty bad, huh? It's a very big range. So let's just talk about what SigmaFine can do. What can data reconciliation do? What we think it can do, what we know it can do, is that we know that we can reduce the uncertainty of about half, and it's very conservative, of about half a standard deviation. This translates to about 13% reduction in your losses. So what we're saying is if you have a loss of 0.47, we can reduce 13% of this. And what does that mean from an oil loss recovery program? Can it pay for itself for 100 kilobarrels per day, which is a standard refinery? That translates to 1.5 million. If we go to the 500 kilograms per day, which is like the Rand refinery, using that price, so targeting just a 13% reduction of a loss, which is 0.47, would translate to 5 million. On the previous slide, we know that the oil and gas, the gold refinery, it's more like at 3%, and it can go even as high as 40%. So this 5 million is like the most conservative estimate. And so we think that talking about losses and minimizing this loss, as it has been very important in the oil and gas world, and therefore it should be even more important in the gold and metal.
Felicia, we've lost your sound. Sorry, Felicia, you seem to be frozen. We've lost her. I'll dial her back in. Apologies.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I lost my internet, so I jumped onto my phone. I don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm. Would you like me to pull up the slides, Felicia?
Did you hear me to this slide?
Sorry?
I was on this slide. Did you hear me to here?
We can't see your slides.
Okay. I'll share. Did you hear me up to here?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So as I was saying that from where we're coming from, even with a loss of 0.47%, we're still able to have significant gains for doing data reconciliation. So we believe that with an industry where losses are, or little unknowns are, it's between 3 and up to 40%, this is a good place for SigmaFine. So our job is to, what you declare as losses. If you declare 3% of losses, our job is to get that down, okay? And we believe that a minimum of 13% would go positively to your, let's say, your economic valuation. This is the economic benefit. So that's why we talk about getting rid of this imbalance in the data and getting more production out. if it is a loss of underutilization of your asset, if you're trusting a meter which is biased, or if there is a material that is actually going missing. So how does Sigma, this part I'm going to go really quickly, because this is just to give you a very quick overview of how we do it in SigmaFine. So as I mentioned before, SigmaFine, it's an infrastructure or a server comes with many analyses. Today, I'm just going to quickly introduce the component balance, but we also do energy, volume, mass. We can also track materials. We can do this balance hourly, daily, monthly. We're natively connected to Aviva, but we can connect to any data historian, and we can turn on the component balance where it is needed. Where it's not needed, we just do the simple mass balance, and we reconcile everything in one shot. Our aim is to consider your measurements, your mass in, out, and your change inventory, as well as the components in and out, and at the start and at the end of the inventory for, let's say, the daily case. From an input point of view, we need the measured data, both for your mass and your analyzers, and we also need the tolerances on this data set. The output is the balanced data set of your total mass in each named species, and we also give the reconciled tolerances for your mass and analyzer data. We also give data quality indicators, how trustable are the results from SigmaFine based on your measured data. This is let's say a standard flow sheet of what a SigmaFine model could look like. This is a flotation cell plant. If we look on the flash floater cleaner, we will see that we have an imbalance of 16 tons on the copper, which is quite big, considering that we started with 55 tons. However, our total mass was 1 ton on 3,400. So from a total mass point of view, the mass balance is fine. From a component of copper, it is far from fine. When we did the reconciliation in our demo, we were able to eliminate the imbalance both on the total mass as well as on the copper. Sorry, 1 second. Marina, prendi a Melite che non ho trovato la tua mamma. Marina, prendi a Melite che non ho sentito la tua mamma. Ciao, grazie.
Velisha, you're on mute.
I don't understand why I keep going on mute. Do you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So Codelco, it's a very big mine site in South America, and they own the mines, they own 2 refineries, and they own the smelter. So they decide to put a metallurgical balance in to optimize their operational results and to control losses in the process. So they know that a part of to optimize their operations, they would also need to take control of their losses. They decided to go with a completely integrated solution for the valorization of their material, considering what they buy, what they sell, as well as the production process. So SigmaFine was being used in the entire organization. Can you hear me? I'm having some bad internet today.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
I just saw my screen. And so from an infrastructure point of view, SigmaFine and the PI system was implemented at all 3 levels, at the division level, at the district level, and at the corporate level. This was to make sure that they had a redundant system and that they had no failure, because this data became mission critical to the operation at Codelco. I just wanted to bring your attention to here. This is a concentrate of the molybdenum, and they have a measured value of 370 and a reconciled value of 357. If you don't have your calculator, and here, this is a SigmaFine result. So we're telling them that the reconciled value is this, and we're telling them that their measured value is not trustable because it has deviated more than 1 standard deviation. If you were to run your plant on this value assuming that this is true, you'd be running at a loss capacity of 3%. This is a daily amount. And I'm curious to understand what is a loss of production of 3% when you're running molybdenum. Is it worth doing data reconciliation? Perhaps it is. Food for thought. Overall, they resulted in an integrated system. It's corporate, it's standard, it's controllable, it supports the AMIRA, and they have reliable data for their metallurgical accounting. Case 2, this was to replace an Excel solution. This is probably where SigmaFine could start in, it's a typical starting place. ArcelorMittal in Canada, they own a lot of things. They have the mines, they have the beneficiation plants, they have the pelletizing plant, they have the ships and the rails. SigmaFine, you think it would be here because you have a lot of liquids. Instead, we're here where it's all metals. Before SigmaFine, they would do weekly production accounting. A lot of Excel spreadsheet. It took them 3 days to do the balance. This is what it looks like. So they bought material. They have measurements on the entry, nothing on the output. And the inventory is measured 2 times per year. Mathematically, this is not solvable on a mass basis, but on mass and component balance, it is. They implemented not just SigmaFine, but they put the Pi. They have a visualization layer on the lab side, and they use Power BI, as well as PiVision in their products as their visualization tool. For those who know the Aviva product, this is the Pi System Explorer. This is just a snippet of what a connection looks like in SigmaFine. It's just a silo that has a flow in and out, and you have a measurement on mass as well as on analyzers on this measurement point. Overall, this model, it's about 500 elements, and this gives you an idea what a SigmaFine's model looks like in terms of size. For those who like digital twin, for those who don't like digital twin, the SigmaFine model follows your material. So it follows the inputs all the way to the products. So we always start with your process flow sheet. We make a connection, a connected model in SigmaFine, and you can visualize the results any way you like it. This is just a visualization in PiVision of the materials. I'm gonna make this a little bit larger. So here we can see their reconciled production. So they have this in the production room. And here we see it's an instantaneous flow, so it's not fair. But if you were to just totalize this average flow rates and what is the reconciled value, you would see that here we have this mysterious 3% bias. Again, using this value, not knowing what your reconciled value is, you'd be misled. You'd think you're producing a lot more than you are. So this is, again, could be seen as a loss of capacity, which still translates to a loss of earning. The longer it takes for you to realize that you're producing less than you should, the harder it is to recover. The nice thing about ArcelorMittal is that they realized that their performance, apart from their imbalance, was highly connected to their assets. So they had one asset utilization model and one for the balance, the mass and component balance. So in their Power BI, they can see that they're behind their targets. So they're 5%, once they're more than 5% behind their target, everything goes red. And they can see which assets is, so their total production is behind. Both furnaces are behind, and it's the feed to this furnace that's giving them some issues, one on both sides. When they click on an object, they can see all the imbalance in the nodes, so they know which node is causing too much problem, so they can focus on the worst one. When they click on a balance point, they can see the history of the meters associated with that balance point, so they can see how the meters have been performing in the previous days. So this one is nice because it's really linking your asset utilization to your metallurgical accounting. Remember that they had a delay of 3 days to do weekly balances. They now do daily balance. And this lady, instead of just doing a mass and component balance, she's being utilized to do other jobs. So and Sigmafine is being used by over 40 other client tools. Before my time runs out, I just want to quickly let you know that Sigmafine has this inherent capability to estimate unknown properties. So we have this quality tracking algorithm, and what does this help you? This is quite nice in your mine site where you have some analyzers at one place, probably on the back end of your crusher, and you're making different stockpiles, and you know how these piles, how these materials are moving, and you would like to know what is my estimate of these analyzers downstream. And that is exactly what quality tracking does. It uses your movements of material and your known measurements to estimate unknown measurements. That was the information I had to share for today. But let's take it, I want to bring it real. And this is just talk about what other people have done, not what, as a vendor. This is a reference, I didn't even redraw it just to show that it's not my work. And we know everybody is here. You start with first you do some exploration, and you make sure that you have some resources in the ground. Then you do a plan, a 30-year plan or a 40-year plan or a 50-year plan, and you present this to the bank. And you build your refinery and you calculate every day what your actual performance is. This is all your planning schedule and operations. But for continuous improvement, they recommend that you also go backwards. You should then put in your data reconciliation layer and your reporting and continue, then get your reconciled data and see how did you really perform in your refinery? How did you really perform in your mine plan, and send it back so you can do a better plan for next year. This is a real plan. What we just talked about this again, it's the Shanti Gold Endocrine Mine, and they are doing data reconciliation, and it's a very simple, it's a business model. It's talking about the mines, let's say business, every chain, it's just one block, it's just the mines, to the refinery, what the refinery received, what it produced. They have some data quality indicators, and here they realized it's the feed to the refinery that they have some issue, and it starts back to, I guess this would be when they're in some cleaning cycles. So, I mean, Ashanti Mines, they're quite, I would say, proactive in looking at their data for continuous improvement. And when you start looking, you will find. And I would say that, losing 9 tons of gold, it's a lot. Yeah, it's really, really a lot. And it's worth going for. I don't want to finish this talk and leave you thinking that to comply with the Amira code, it's just Sigmafine. That's not true. You need a lot of pillars. You need more than just software. Sigmafine does the mass balance. We can reconcile and validate your data. We can also integrate with third-party solution. Often, if it's OSI, if it's Aviva, it's native. But if it's not, we can integrate to other solutions. Aviva has a wide range of products, which you probably heard this morning, that supports the metals and mining industry. Here, we're just talking about vendors. But all projects, we need feet on the ground, and a special shout out to Rifle Shot, because every project needs local expertise, locals, persons to work with on the day-to-day basis. And we believe that a successful project, it's selecting the right technological vendors, but it's also working with a good partner. And with this, I really thank you for listening. And this is just for discussion. If you don't want to do the calculation now, you can send us what you think your answers could be. But if you think of a 3% loss across different industries, whether it's gold, molybdenum, or iron, with some standard capacities for the different industries, and if we just target 15% improvement, running 300 days per year, I'm pretty sure you would discover that we'll be saving millions. And so my message here is, let's talk about improving the data quality so that you can reduce your losses, improve your performance, and get better performance out of the investment that you have already that has already taken place. So, any questions? I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Alicia. Those are staggering financial results for very small percentage improvements. I was just wondering how long would it typically take to implement Sigma Find?
Okay, so nice question, Caroline. I mean, the devil is in the detail. So, you know, on a quick project, so if you're just like the data reconciliation flow sheet from Ashanti Gold Mine, that's looking at the big block. So mine as one object, for the beneficiation as one object, refinery as an object, smelting as an object. When you start at a business level, the models tend to be rather simple. And so if we're not pushing a lot of reports, you know, those kinds of projects tend to be small licenses. That's where you make the big wins, because then you start to see which let's say which asset, which site, or which process block is underperforming. Those kinds of projects tend to be the ones that you see big things quickly. They tend to be a smaller license and smaller services. However, we have customers that decide to open each processing chain like Codelco, and they look at each leach cell, each mill. Those projects tend to be much bigger because they're also doing asset utilization. So they're trying to minimize losses, but they also want to see, also like the ArcelorMittal, where they're looking at, you know, one furnace versus the other. Those projects tend to be a little bit longer and cost a little bit more, and the models are going to be a little bit bigger. Roughly, smaller projects tend to be 4 to 6 months duration, and let's say less than 1,000 element models. Larger projects tend to be about 3,000 to 6,000 element models, and those tend to run just, let's say, a year in terms of services.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any further questions from the audience?
Caroline, it's Dilly. Not a question, but an observation for Valencia. I see she used a calculation of 8 rands to $1. It's now double, Felicia. It's more than 16 rands to $1.
Yeah, the 6 million, just to understand where it came from. So that 6 million was a study done by Ashanti Gold Mine, and so that 6 million USD was done in 2012 when they studied their performance. I believe it was for 6 or 7 years, and they found an annual loss that they could not find gold relative, and they had a mine call factor of 100%. But when they evaluated the flow sheet from what they mined to what they produced, they seem to be missing 6 million USD at a time, when the average, yes, it was a much, but it's USD, it's still USD. So just to let you know, it was let's say it's like one of the most studied mine, I would say, in a data reconciliation, and they still see room for improvement. You know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, if we should get some customers that have much lower mine call factor, the guys that are operating at, you know, 80%, 70%, if we could just get a conversation with these guys, you know, it would be a very interesting project to run.
Thanks.
Are there any further questions? Well, in that case, thank you everybody for your time and interest. Thank you, Alicia, for your presentation. That's very insightful. And we look forward to seeing you all at our next session, which will be tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And that one is on cargo value, which is focused on emissions monitoring and loading of ships at the port.